Hello, and welcome to Breast Cancer Conversations, a podcast brought to you by survivingbreastcancer.org. I am Laura Carfing, breast cancer survivor and founder of survivingbreastcancer.org, a nonprofit organization providing community, education, and resources to empower those diagnosed with breast cancer and their caregivers from day one and beyond. Our podcasts are made possible thanks to our sponsor, Store My Tumor. Your preserved tumor contains the most important information about your cancer. Store My Tumor provides live tumor preservation and coordination of advanced diagnostics and personalized immunotherapies. Thank you so much for supporting us. Hello, my friends. I'm so happy to be connecting with you this week on Breast Cancer Conversations. I'm your host, Laura Carfing, and if you're joining us for the first time, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and receive notifications each time we come out with a new episode. To all of you who tune in every week, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. This week, I'm so excited to have Lauren Neuburger on the show. She is the founder and creator of Nutritious Delicious Life. Diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 26, she went down the path of traditional treatment. After her lumpectomy and radiation, she decided to forgo tamoxifen for 10 years and pursue a holistic route instead. This path became her passion and career. Going back to school to study holistic nutrition, Lauren now runs a thriving online coaching business to help all of us learn about the natural options we have to heal our bodies and live a thriving life.
Life after cancer can be a burden or a gift, and you get to choose. And what I want people to realize is that you can choose. If you do have a choice, the body is the most resilient, beautiful, magnificent being, and learning how all of the different organ systems, hormones interact together and live in harmony or disharmony, which brings on disease. Like learning how to work holistically, it's so intense, because you could have someone with breast cancer or a thyroid problem, because those are connected a lot of the times too. But really, part of the problem is digestion. You have to know how and where to start. So that's kind of what school was all about, is just really understanding how the body's all connected, and then how to really figure out where to start, how to start, why, and how to connect all the dots. I'm just all about having authentic, genuine conversations and, talking about breast cancer prevention, survivorship, diagnosis. It's something that I do all day, as do you. So I think we'll have lots to talk about, and wherever the conversation goes, it goes.
Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honestly so excited and honored to be here. I was looking forward to this for a while, so I'm happy that, we were able to schedule in the date for it. So hi, everybody who's listening. My name is Lauren. I am a breast cancer survivor turned holistic nutritionist. I was diagnosed when I was 26 years old, and at that time my life was everything but holistic. I was living a very toxic lifestyle of excess. So a lot of drinking, a lot of late nights. I was working really long hours at a career that paid me really well, but I was miserable. I just didn't have a lot of love for myself, and I was just living a very, toxic lifestyle. And it finally caught up to me, and I was 26, and I felt a lump in my right breast one day when I was taking a shower. And long story short, it turned out to be cancerous. So like I said, I had never heard of natural medicine. I was completely living the opposite of I'm living now. So I had never even knew that there were other alternatives available to me. So I had conventional treatment, I had a lumpectomy, then I had chemotherapy, and then radiation. And I was supposed to be on hormone blockers like tamoxifen for 10 years. It was during my radiation treatment, actually right before radiation started, I just happened to catch a podcast that had a naturopathic doctor on it who was talking about natural cancer care. And I was like, wait, what? This is a thing? I had never even knew about this before. Like, to give you an example, like, pre-diagnosis, I thought people who spent money on organic produce were stupid. Like, I remember telling my sister that she was dumb for wasting her money on this. I'm like, put that money in your savings account. Like, I can't believe that that's how I used to think. Like, I was so, just blinded by, the way that I had no clue. I had no concept that there was something else out there. But when I heard this podcast and I heard this doctor speak, I was really just intrigued. Like, part of it just gripped my soul. So, I booked an appointment, a free consultation with a naturopath in my area who specialized in cancer. And I started working with her during my radiation treatments. And, I don't know if you can see me, if this is going to be on YouTube or not, but I have very fair skin. Like, right now it's August and I have my tan, and this is like as dark as I get, and it's not very dark. So, my very fair skin didn't burn at all from radiation. And, I started riding my bike to my radiation treatments at the hospital. Like, I had energy again. Like, I couldn't deny that this was working for me. And, I just wanted to take it to a new level. So, I really wanted to do more for myself in between my visits to my naturopath. So I started to look at, food and nutrition. I looked at what could I do to show up for myself every single day. If I'm seeing my naturopath once a month, what can I do the other, 29 or 30 days? What can I do for me? So I just really got, into nutrition, like what foods could help me, what foods could harm me. And I really was curious as to the why. I was like reading like the science behind everything. And, I loved it, but I didn't really understand it because it's really complicated when you start trying to learn science as an adult with no science background. So I'm like,
yes.
You know what? I decided that, this was something that was really important to me. I got so invested in it that I ended up taking myself off of tamoxifen, and I balanced my entire prevention plan completely naturally. And when I made that decision to do that, that's when I also kind of made the decision to pursue nutrition as a career. So I left that, toxic career that was bringing me no joy, and, went back to school and became a holistic nutritionist. And I specialize in breast cancer because, that's where, my story is. That's where my passion is. And now I lead the cancer nutrition program at a leading naturopathic oncology clinic just outside of Toronto. And I also have a thriving online coaching practice where, I coach women all around the world. And doing this, I'm like, this information that I have, it was exhausting trying to figure it out all on my own all those years. And it needs to be accessible to the people who need it the most. So yeah, I took my practice online maybe 6 months ago, and
wow,
yeah, I'm really happy.
It's just like, what brings you joy? How can you take this terrible experience that, again, even though like there's doctors and nurses and a lot of people who have had been personally touched by cancer, they haven't actually gone through what we've gone through, right? So they really are relying on us as the experts of relaying to them this like lived experience of what the side effects are. So I think we're both doing a huge service to the breast cancer community.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's the most important part is that, even my naturopath, like she would give me great advice, and I took it and I saw results, but a part of me was always like, do I really trust her? Like, her life isn't on the line here, like
right.
It's life and death to me. It's life and death to you and to everyone listening. It's like when you can actually take advice from someone who's doing it, like this is their life too, it just really, really, really allows you to kind of take that leap of faith a little bit more. And, I think it's really important work that we're doing for sure.
Absolutely. So I want to go back to your diagnosis. You said you were 26 when you were diagnosed. 2 questions. How old are you now, if you don't mind me asking? And then also, when you found this lump, like, because I'm trying to think, breast cancer really isn't part of like our terminology, like unless we have an aunt or, a relative or somebody who's been through cancer. So I can imagine like just being in the shower and feeling something and not thinking twice about it. Can you tell me a little bit more about?
Yeah. So I'm 31 and a half. So it's been, it'll be 5 years since diagnosis for me in beginning of January. Like my biopsy was January 2nd. I was like, as soon as you're open again after the new year, I'm coming in. So it's January 2nd. So yeah, it's almost 5 years. So that's exciting. I'm really happy to hit that milestone.
That is a huge milestone. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's just, I don't even think about it anymore, which is kind of cool. But like now that I'm pretty active on social media and I see everyone celebrating their anniversaries, I'm like, oh my God, that's so amazing. I'm like, oh my God, I'm almost 5 years. That's pretty sweet.
Totally.
Yeah, it's just like I live with just such like freedom and ease every day that like I really don't think about it, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so to answer your question, yeah, there's no familial history of breast cancer in my family. And like I said, I wasn't really, living a great lifestyle, but for some reason I was still just really aware of my body. I don't know how. I'm just like, thank you, universe, for allowing that to happen. So I found this lump, and it's funny because I was such a stress case and I stressed over everything in my life at this time. There wasn't a single thing that didn't cause me stress and anxiety. Like I couldn't even get through the day without being stressed out, anxious, panic attacks. Like basically it was bad. But it's funny, I didn't stress out about this lump. It was the weirdest thing. I felt this lump and I'm like, that has to be nothing. I'm 26 years old. Like there's clearly nothing to talk about here.
Right.
So I'm like, if it's still there in a week, I'll go get it checked out. So a week later, it was still there, obviously.
Oh my gosh.
So then that's when I got it checked out, and that's when the ball started to roll. But yeah, initially I was just like, no, it can't be anything serious. It's just going to be like, I don't know. Like I was clueless. I was like, it's probably inflammation. I was working out too hard or something. Like, no, inflammation is not like a tangible ball like in your chest. But, you know, because it was actually weird. It's kind of like up like closer to my armpit. That's why I thought maybe that's why. But no, it was definitely a breast cancer tumor.
Oh gosh. And did it go to your lymph nodes at all, or did it stay?
It did not. No, I had I think 5 lymph nodes removed as part of the lumpectomy surgery, but it didn't travel. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I remember mine too. It's always like, what's the phrase, like hindsight 2020. So, you know, I remember feeling a lump for years actually that went misdiagnosed. I was talking to my primary care about it. I was concerned about it. And it was always like, there's no family history. You're too young. This couldn't happen to you. And even when my boyfriend was pointing it out, I was like, you know what? That's always been there. Like, I felt like, and that's one of the things too, especially like on August 1st today when everyone's talking about feeling it on the 1st, it's like, yes, you want to be familiar with your body, but not to the point also where you're like, oh, that's always been there, so I'm just accepting that as normal.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And like a message that I always want to talk about is like patient advocacy. I mean, most of my work now is on survivorship. So, you know, you're not really in the thick of things with your oncologist anymore. Maybe you have follow-ups, but I still do see some clients that are in active treatment. I support them with mitigating side effects and things like that, just to make, you know, chemo a lot easier, radiation, etc. But my message for that is, you know, you are your own advocate. This is your body. This is your life. That doctor is doing his or her job, and they're doing a great job, of course, but you're not their only patient. You are your only body. So you need to make yourself a priority, and just who cares if you ask questions and you go above your and beyond your appointment time. That's your right as a patient to have that, and you get it.
Yes.
Like you get your questions answered. So for anyone listening, you know, feel it on the 1st, of course, but like just always be your own advocate for, you know, your health and your body. If something's not right, like get it checked out for sure.
Absolutely. And I was just posting actually on IGTV. I don't know if that's what I was doing before I jumped on. I'm not sure if it's posted there, but was talking about it's great to feel it on the 1st, but also do it throughout the month, because depending on your like cycle and everything too, your breasts are going to feel different throughout the various like days of the week and time of the month and everything. So it's important to just be, again, self-aware. So,
yeah, for sure.
Excellent. So, okay, tell me more about this transition now into like health and nutrition, and a little bit about your schooling. It sounds like you totally changed your career and was learning so much that's so applicable now that you're giving back.
Yeah. So, I mean, I went back to school with the intention of always doing what I'm doing now. It was like my eye was always on the prize. I had a very clear vision. I've always been like a strong worker, so I gave a lot to my old career. But it's funny because growing up, random people, even my old employers, like some of them would actually say like, Lauren, I always see you being an entrepreneur. And I was like, nah, it's too much work. I'm not about that life. I'm just gonna like sit here, show up, leave, get my benefits, get my pension, like all that. Not about that hard life. But now here I am. So I guess they saw something in me I didn't see in myself for a while. But yeah, I went back to school, and you know, school is it's intense, but it's not like a breast cancer specific nutrition program. You know, it's like you have to learn how the body functions. Like the body is the most resilient, beautiful, magnificent being, and learning how all of the different organ systems, hormones interact together and live in harmony or disharmony, which you know, brings on disease. Like learning how to you know, work holistically, it's so intense, because you could have someone with breast cancer or a thyroid problem, because those are connected a lot of the times too. But really, you know, part of the problem is digestion. You have to know how and where to start. So that's kind of what school was all about, is just really understanding how the body's all connected, and then how to really figure out where to start, how to start, why, and how to connect all the dots. It was the most intense program I've ever done.
Wow.
But then, you know, I've done all my own work thereafter on breast cancer specifically, because, you know, this is where my niche is in my business. So like I said, I do work in a clinic, so I do have some clients that come to me for just like random things like weight loss, like chronic pain. I'm like, that's cool. I'll do it in clinic, but my online practice is strictly focused on breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually strictly focused on survivorship now. I see people in my clinic for like during active treatment, but I no longer take people online that are still in active treatment. It's just too hard. There's too many, cooks in that kitchen. And since I'm not physically present, I just chose to step away from that.
Mm-hmm.
But I still have a few currently that I'm going to see through, which is great.
No, and I feel like that's very similar to what we're doing at survivingbreastcancer.org as well, where, of course, we're going to help anyone from like day one of diagnosis through survivorship. But to your point, like there's so many support options while people are going through active treatment. They have their medical care team, their oncologist, the radiologist, they're constantly getting checked on like a weekly basis. But it's really after you get that, like, oh, come back in 6 months or come back in a year, and you're in this like program of, oh my gosh, how do I get my life back? Whether that's transitioning back into the workforce or getting back into a workout routine or nutrition, that's all the like aftermath and PTSD. That's like, I remember for me, like I used to love yoga, and then all of a sudden I like couldn't do the vinyasas or the push-ups anymore because of my surgery. And yoga became this like really negative thing for me because it just triggered that I had breast cancer because I couldn't do what I was able to do before. And I was talking to a lot of women too who are just trying to get back into exercise, thinking they can just pick up where they left off. And it's really hard for us to just realize, oh my gosh, we went through this really crazy traumatic experience. Our bodies have like physically changed. How can we, empower ourselves and become stronger, both like emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, etc. So exactly. I love what you're doing.
Yeah. And actually, I'm going to be doing a webinar kind of on exactly what you were just talking about, probably in September. So I'm really excited about that. It's actually really on kind of what you just said is that, when you're done active treatment, you ring the bell, you bang the gong, like you are high on life, but there's that honeymoon period for sure, but it ends. And then you're kind of like, okay, my oncologist that I saw, weekly for chemo is like, see ya, in 6 months or see you in a year. And then, there's this expectation that we have in our minds that like when treatment ends, because like when you're going through it, you're just like focusing on that end day, that last treatment. That's all you want. That's like the top of your mountain. Then you get there. So it's even subconscious. It's like in your mind, you're like, when I hit that bell, my life's going to turn back to normal. But the problem is it doesn't. So there's this huge gap between, in care between the conventional system being like, we'll see you next year, your symptoms should subside within a year, but how you actually feel. Like a lot of the women that I coach are, 2 to 5 years after diagnosis. And they're like, I still struggle with chemo brain. I still struggle with debilitating fatigue. Or it's not maybe debilitating anymore, but it's like, I think I'm just used to being this tired. So now I'm just like pretty tired all the time. And I'm like, okay, well, it's the weekend. Are you, socializing Friday and Saturday, or do you have to choose between one or the other? And they're like, I have to choose. Like, I don't have the energy. And it's like, to me, that's not surviving. Like you're surviving, you're not thriving. And it's like, you just had the most traumatic, time of your life. It was traumatic on your family, on your friends, your coworkers, everybody's impacted by this. And it's like, these symptoms, you don't have to live with them. So that's kind of what my webinar is going to be on. That's really what my coaching program is all about. It's that like, and all these things, I really want you to be living your best life. And it's really about getting to the root cause of why you still have these symptoms and then addressing that so you can actually go on to thrive. Because, as a practitioner and as someone who's been through it, I don't want you to be like sitting on the sidelines for your life, ever again. You need to be like full on enjoying it. And, I struggled with the side effects. They persisted too. It was part of my healing. I had really debilitating fatigue about 2 years ago. Like, my school was so intense. Like we had a 1 month break in the program, in the summer, and like, I crashed. Like I literally couldn't get up off the couch. I like everyone thought I was sick, and I was just like, I couldn't talk to anybody. I was basically bedridden. It was terrible. And, I got to a point where I had 1 class left in my program and I had to drop down to part-time. I couldn't even finish it. I was like, I will finish it next semester. Like I can't bring myself to do this. Like it's too much. And, we just put up with this because we think in our minds, well, it's better than the alternative of having cancer. But it's like, life after cancer can be a burden or a gift, and you get to choose. And what I want people to realize is that you can choose. If you do have a choice, so many people are just like, this is life after cancer. And if you kind of go on social media, there's so many people that are kind of complaining about their symptoms still, so it
Right.
normalizes it. And that's what my message is all about, is that yes, like I totally understand that it's common to have these symptoms persisting, years after diagnosis, but I don't want to say that they're normal, because they don't have to be. It's
Right.
common, but just because the other people that you follow on Instagram are complaining doesn't mean you have to too. Like, there's always a choice. And that's kind of what my message is about advocacy, and survivorship, is advocating for yourself and your well-being. And I want you to really, really, really be thriving.
Yes, I'm just writing that down. I think that's going to be the name of our podcast, is It's Common, but it doesn't have to be. I think that is so important to hear and say out loud, because you're absolutely right. Everybody is talking about aches and pains, or not able to discern, am I just tired because I'm normal and this is tired because I had a long week, or am I tired because these are the aftermath effects of chemotherapy and radiation? And, realizing that even years out after all of this active treatment that we had, our body is still quite toxic. So what are we doing from a holistic perspective, and seeing food as medicine, and really being able to kind of flush that out, so that way we can recuperate the enzymes and vitamins and energy that we need?
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot to recuperating for sure. And it is pretty individualized, but it really starts with looking at your life prior to diagnosis. So for me, the reason why I was so depleted during that, my schooling, is because it was so intense and rigorous, but I never really gave myself time to heal. I was really depleted going into diagnosis and treatment. And then, me thinking that I have something to prove and I'm a burden on everybody. Those are things that I had to really face and acknowledge.
Yeah.
That I went back to work, at my finance job sooner than I really should have, because I was like, well, I'm so young. They're expecting me back.
Right.
I don't need to take this much time off. No, I needed the time. And then I went straight into really learning about nutrition. So I spent kind of like what you're doing now, is you're working full time, but you're spending all your spare time on your passion project. That's what I was doing for a while too. And then, I went back to school. So I was just constantly depleted, and it caught up to me. So it's about really looking at, painting a really holistic picture and getting a timeline, because that's going to really identify the root cause. So really, I think your question was what can you do to kind of detox out?
Yes.
So the first step really is painting that timeline, just to see what organ system really need to be detoxified, because it's not just I have too many hormones, with estrogen or whatever, if it was hormonally related. Your body is one beautiful interconnected ecosystem. So it's really about knowing where to start the detoxification, because you can't just start doing a liver cleanse all willy-nilly, because your other organ, your other elimination systems need to be cleared out first, so that way when your liver is detoxifying, it's not dumping things into other areas. So there's definitely a systematic, way to go about doing things. A good place to start is honestly just looking at digestion. That is the most basic elimination organ. It's are you eliminating your bowels daily? So, and if you're not, which, 90% of the people I see think they are, but they're not. When I ask the right questions, they're actually, you're right. I don't think I am. So that's a really good place to start. So that, is really with mostly nutrition. So looking at, what you're eating or not eating, and really changing that up. So really just at a high level, just eating a bunch of vegetables is going to help with all detoxification pathways for sure. But really, I think the biggest piece of the life after breast cancer puzzle is on the mental emotional piece, and that fatigue and the stress and the anxiety and the fear of recurrence. And there's a lot we can do with nutrition and supplementation to address that. So really, when I have someone who comes in with anxiety, stress, really chronic fatigue, I really look at nutrition to be okay, what are you eating, what time of day? And you're just playing around with the macronutrients, your proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, playing around with ratios at different meals and different times of the day can really, really, really impact cognitive function. It can really impact hormonal balance, things like that. So I try to do everything with food first, because supplements are supplemental in nature. They're not intended to be on them forever. But a lot of these imbalances, you kind of said it already, like we're really toxic after treatments, and, it does persist in our bodies for quite some time, that you can't do things with just food alone, but you can't do things with just supplementation alone either. You really do need a true holistic combined approach to really address that. Yeah, there was something else I was going to say with that, but I forget. So I think it'll come back.
I'm sure. And how did your oncologist respond when you decided to no longer stay on tamoxifen?
So that's an interesting one. So the oncologist, I think at my hospital, I lived in a small city at the time. I live in Toronto now, but, I would think just like overall, I kind of got the vibe that like the oncologist where I was getting treated, they just happened to be of more of a, oh my gosh, what's the word? Conservative nature. So they weren't really open to natural therapies, but a lot of people are starting to incorporate that. So they were open to it. My oncologist happened to be, I think, the most conservative out of all of them. So she was, I think she did a great job. I asked her a bunch of questions. I was like, can I take this? Can I take this? I read about this, and her answer was honest. She was like, I'm not a naturopath, so I don't know. Right. And I appreciated that, because I don't want her just to give me a no because she doesn't know. It's like, she's not a naturopath, so how does she know? Right?
Exactly.
So, because people don't realize that like naturopaths have a tremendous amount of schooling. It's a really rigorous, medical program as well. And, there's evidence-based natural medicine. So, there's a lot of support for it. So how could she know everything that she needs to know to be a great, medical oncologist if she's spending all her spare time reading about natural stuff? So I really appreciated her answer. And so I just went and saw a naturopath. So the rest of it though, so when I got off tamoxifen, she was like, you know what, I'm telling you honestly, it's against my medical opinion, but you are free to do whatever you want to do. So if you have researched this and you're comfortable with the care you're getting with your naturopath and the work that you're going to do on yourself, she's like, I'm not going to tell you no, or she's like, I'm telling you like what she's like, I'm telling you no, but you can do whatever you want kind of thing. But she's like, just make sure it's like, thought out. And then she wanted me to go for mammograms, and I declined mammograms. So she was like, honestly, like, I love seeing you, but if you're not on tamoxifen and you're not going to have mammograms, I have no reason to keep you on as a patient. Like, you don't have anything in my care anymore. So I was just dismissed as a patient, and that was it.
Wow. And you declined the mammograms because of the x-ray and the radiation because of them?
Yeah, and I just want to kind of go on the record and say I'm not against mammograms.
Of course.
A lot of people are, very like one way or the other. I'm against mammograms for me at this age of my life. So I want to make that clear. And, I did a blog post a while ago about like why I refused a mammogram. And it was just like my perspective on me as a person.
Sure.
And I got a lot of comments on it. And it was kind of like, people were like, oh, she's refusing mammograms, so you can't listen to anything she has to say. She clearly doesn't know what she's talking about. And people were having conversations back and forth. And it's like, hello, I'm a person. I'm like, this is my life, right? Like, you're forgetting that I actually had cancer too. And I value my life, and I don't want it to come back. Like, I'm making this choice, and it's an informed choice. Like, I truly believe that choosing to not have a mammogram is in the best interest for me and my long-term health, right?
Sure.
So, but I'm not against it. I think every woman should do whatever she needs to feel confident, safe, and supported in her body. And mammograms are a tool. So for me, being the age that I was, I have very dense breasts. So you don't really get accurate readings on a mammogram with that. So it makes no sense to me to have a mammogram. Initially, my oncologist actually told me that I was not going to have mammograms because of my age. And then randomly, like 4 months later, my treatment was done, she tried to spring a mammogram on her. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, you told me before that it was this, it was going to be this other way.
Sure.
I know a few women that I've connected with through Instagram that are also, young women. So their oncologist told them, your MRIs until your breast tissue isn't dense, because why would we expose you to radiation if we can't get a good reading? So a lot of oncologists do acknowledge that, just not all of them do. So I think that mammograms are a good tool depending on your age. The other thing that I want to say too is that, like, you are exposed to radiation, and it is cumulative. So, the guidelines used to be mammograms for like standard women, like of no like major risk factors starting at age 40, but they changed it to age 50, I think, I don't know, like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So there's this huge controversy, and women are like, I want my mammogram, like I want my extra 10 years. And it's like, I get it, like, but what I want you to realize is that like a mammogram isn't doing anything. It's telling you if there's something in your body or in your breast or not, and then you go back the next year and you have another year of radiation. It's like, cool, you don't have anything in your breast, see you next year. And then the third year, oh my God, all of a sudden you have cancer. It's like, well, cancer doesn't grow in that 1 year. It grows over time. It takes about 8 years for a palpable tumor to form. So those other 2 mammograms that you had that, didn't diagnose anything, just because it was too small to appear on a mammogram, doesn't mean that you didn't have cancer and you could have been taking preventive measures for it. So, for me, radiation is cumulative, and I think there's other scans that can be done that are less invasive that can give you more accurate reading. I'm a huge fan of thermography, so I might throw some information about that in there too.
Yes.
I'll talk about that in a second, but the other thing I just kind of wanted to say is, for me personally, like, because radiation is cumulative, and I had the option, to have a mammogram or MRIs, whatever, but like, I was 27 when my treatment finished, and that's another, 13 years till age 40 when normal women would start having it. So that's 13 years of radiation. Plus now I'm going to live a very long, happy, healthy life. So from 40 to, let's say, 80. So that's 53 years of mammograms. Isn't that, like, it's an insane amount of radiation to expose yourself to? It's like, people, these guidelines for mammogram screenings, they're very outdated, and that's what people don't realize, is that was, the standard for women that are, of age 40 to 50, whatever it is, that aren't really getting exposed to, aren't getting breast cancer yet. So they're just of average risk. But, women are getting cancer so much younger now, as evidenced by you, me, everyone listening to this podcast, everyone that I coach, people reading your newsletter.
Yes.
It's like, we have to really stop and think that these guidelines need to be revisited and remodeled for women who are younger, because I don't understand how it should be the standard practice of treatment for me as a 27-year-old finishing treatment to have mammogram screenings in the same protocol as someone who's 45 or 50 and finishing their breast cancer treatment. Like, it should be distinguished based on age, because, we are getting diagnosed younger, and that's kind of my message, is that, like, treatment is individualized. I don't like that my treatment as such a young woman would expose me to more radiation because of my age than someone who was older. So those are my reasons for changing, or for refusing, a mammogram. I did MRIs for the first 2 years, and after that I was like, nah, I'm gonna just not do MRIs anymore either. But I did that just to kind of bridge the gap between conventional and integrative. And I was fine with those choices. Now I'm doing thermography. I'm actually going for my first thermogram on Thursday. So
wow.
A week from today. I'm really excited. Yeah. So, because my message is all about prevention. Like, I shout it from the rooftops, as a cancer survivor, my biggest goal in life is to prevent a recurrence. And that's what I coach women to do too. It's to really be your advocate, take charge of your health, and, make these changes so you can, do everything you can to prevent a recurrence. So going back to mammograms, like, it does nothing for prevention. It's a diagnostic tool. So it's like, do you have cancer? Is there something in your breast? Is it cancerous? Yes or no? Move on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Does nothing to prevent it. So thermograms are a really awesome tool, because it helps you see if something's forming. So going back to that example earlier where there's a tumor, in your mammogram on year 3. Well, if you had a thermogram, you could see something kind of going on earlier, and you could take some steps to really prevent that. So you could be like, okay, well, let me take a look at what else is going on and maybe make some changes and, nip that in the bud, so to speak. So I'm pretty excited about it. So in case anyone is like, what's a thermogram? What it kind of does is, it takes like an infrared image of your breast, or I'm actually doing a whole body thermogram because I'm like, I want to know what's going on everywhere.
Yeah, totally.
Why not, right? So it takes like an infrared image of your breast, your thyroid, your whole body, whatever it is you want to do. And because it does infrared, it picks up on heat. So as we know, cancer cells move faster, so they generate more heat in the body. So what this does is it kind of like depicts in colors, like red's like a hot spot where there's a lot of, activity. And then, other colors are like less activity or just like normal functionality. So you can kind of get a picture of what's going on. So if you see like there's a lot of like hot spots in your breast, it's kind of like, okay, well, there's something going on there. Let's maybe the next step could be a mammogram,
Sure.
But it's like my message is like, why expose yourself to radiation from a mammogram if you don't need to? Do that as a diagnostic tool when and if you need to. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely, 100%. And we've been super fortunate as well to have a couple radiologists on our podcast talking about all different types of screenings and really breaking down the difference between like a screening mammogram or a diagnostic mammogram, and all of the enhancements, as you were mentioning, with the like thermal mammography, contrast-based mammography. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to be speaking with another doctor talking to us about, I think it's, what is it? Molecular breast imaging, MBI. So I think, again, to your point, it's just providing these resources so that us as patients, as people, can like really choose what is best for us that meets like our values and our interests right there. I remember talking to a couple women. So I took a really aggressive approach when I got first diagnosed, right? I was meeting with my oncologist saying, I want to have the neoadjuvant chemotherapy to try and shrink the size of my tumor. I was on 5 different types of chemotherapy, followed by surgery, the 33 rounds of radiation. I did not have a complete response to the treatment, so I was on chemotherapy again for another 6 months, plus 1 year of like Herceptin because of like the ER positive diagnosis. So a ton of treatment, and you're just like trying to muscle through it, right? For like 18, 21 months of just like trying to get through. And now that you're on this like side of survivorship, you're like, that was a lot. Like, I don't want to go back for my mammogram. I am exhausted, right? Like the mental and emotional fatigue that accompanies the treatment. But I already like gave in to this like really aggressive tactic, right? I was like, we're going all in, whatever you recommend. I had a really great relationship with my oncologist. I still do. And we're just like super aggressive, and I'm all for it. But then all of us, and I remember talking to other women who decided to refuse the hormonal therapies. And I remember very early on just like telling my parents or telling my boyfriend, like, oh my God, I can't believe that. Like, how could they say no to this? Like, we've been so aggressive up until this point. And now that I'm at this point, I'm like, oh my God, like the quality of life, like taking this pill every day, like there are huge trade-offs that, yes, it could be common. I love your term of like, yes, it's common, but it doesn't have to be necessary. I think that really resonates with me. And
yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah. And I'm sure like a lot of our listeners too, because so much of it I don't know if it's like a gender or us as women, but like we muscle through so much, and really being able to give ourselves permission that like, okay, yes, there is a standard, there are guidelines, there's protocols, but we have choice in this. And I love this conversation because we're really being able to challenge the convention. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and I just want to say too, my goal is never to get people off of medication. Most of the women that I coach are on tamoxifen or an aromatase inhibitor, and like that's totally okay. Like I'm all for it because, like I said, like you are your advocate, and I'm all about an integrative approach when it's the best thing for that person. For me, it's just not the best for me anymore. That's why I stopped. Like I said, I did MRIs for a couple of years, and now I all natural, but that took me 4.5 years to get to this point, right? So it's a journey. And there was something that you said that I really liked, and I forget it, but it was beautiful. Everything you just said was great.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's the continuum, right? So I feel like what we decided, like the day that we were walking out after active treatment to where you are, like I'm 2 years out since active treatment. I can't wait to get to the 5-year mark and celebrate with you shortly. But I think it's the continuum of how is our body responding, especially people under 40 who are being forced into medical menopause. And then by the time you're off some of these pills, then you're in like natural menopause. And really the response to depleting yourself of these hormones, I'm super curious to know more about this idea of like being in balance and harmony or disharmony. So yeah, I would love for you to like expound on that a little bit.
For sure. And actually, I remember what I wanted to say before. It was when you were talking about how like you couldn't believe that women were saying no to these hormones and stuff like that. I actually read over some things that I wrote at the time I was diagnosed. And I recall this one thing that I wrote where I was like, oh my God, like, I couldn't imagine like not taking my pill for 10 years. I was like, I can't wait till I'm just doing that. And all I have to do is take a pill. Like I was so gung ho about like the medicine. Now I'm just like the opposite. So it is a continuum, it is a journey, and we have a choice at every step of the process.
Exactly.
And, what I love as well, what you said is that like a lot of women, they take this pill every day and they have these undesirable side effects. And, sometimes we just put up with it. We're like, well, what's the alternative? Cancer again? And that's kind of why I like to shed light on this topic and talk about the imbalances that you wanted to speak about now, because, it's not about like, I don't want your quality of life to be so, undesirable. If you have these really horrible side effects like weight gain, fatigue, bone pain, just being in menopause, hot flashes are a common one that I get.
Hello, everyone, all of our listeners.
Yeah,
Seriously.
Exactly. So I'll give you some good tips for hot flashes then, because that's going to be really impactful for sure. But it's like I in a couple of like Facebook support groups and just kind of answering some questions. Some people have nutrition questions, and there was a thread not too long ago about people wanting to get off their tamoxifen. And, some women were like kind of bullying them, being like, well, you should just accept these side effects. They are what they are. The alternative is cancer. And, these women are doing such a courageous thing by wanting to just own their life and just live their best. People react to things differently, and these side effects can be really terrible. And, there's always a choice, and it's always about finding the right balance for you. So whoever's listening, if you are on, some type of hormone blocker and you feel great, I just want you to know that that's awesome and I support that. But if you don't feel great, just ask your oncologist, reach out to me. There's things that we can do. So just to kind of answer, the question you had about hormone imbalances. So, your hormones aren't the enemy. They don't cause cancer. Hormonal imbalances do. The body is a beautiful, self-healing, resilient ecosystem. And when everything's fine, it's fine. The body has so many backup systems, like self-healing mechanisms, repair mechanisms, detoxification systems. The body wants you to be happy, healthy, and thrive. The problem is that the way most of us have lived and just being exposed to things, and also just our thoughts are really powerful, and they change the physiology of our cells. These detox pathways, these elimination pathways, they just get, blocked up, and, imbalances occur. So with, breast cancer, they're not always hormonal related, but that's, most of what I coach is, and that's what mine was as well. We have too much estrogen is essentially the cause, but these hormone blocking medications, their job is just kind of preventing extra estrogen from binding to breast cells. So as a hormonally driven breast cancer survivor, that sounds great, right? But it does nothing to actually address why estrogen is high in the first place. And that's kind of where my work begins. Yes. It's why is this high? And also how high is it? Can we test that? It's 2019. We don't have to guess what's going on inside of our bodies. There's a test for everything. So, I really encourage people to just become very aware of what they're doing and, their actions, their thoughts, and, we can address, imbalances through nutrition, lifestyle, and supplementation. That's really the bulk of the work that I do. So, signs of hormonal imbalances, are like painful periods, even swollen breasts. That's a common one. Most people just think it's normal to have swollen breasts around the time your period's about to start. No, it's actually not. It's a hormonal imbalance. And that's something that I had my whole life growing up. I just figured it was normal. I remember talking to all my friends oh, my boobs hurt today, I must be getting my period on Tuesday. Yep. It's that's a sign that something's not right. So just really paying attention to your body and questioning everything now at this point, because a lot of the things that we've been conditioned our whole lives to think is normal because everyone else had it too, it's not actually normal. And not to say that if you have tender breasts before your period, you're going to get breast cancer, but it is a sign that hormones are out of balance. And eventually, if more things go out of balance, other systems get backed up, disease can happen in the body, and it could be breast cancer or it could be something else. So, but anything hormonal related, my first thought is always breast cancer, prevent that right
yes.
now. But for anyone who's listening, if you have hot flashes, so actually here's what I do for people with hot flashes. The easiest, most accessible thing that works so well is actually to drink sage tea. So go to your health food store and buy sage tea. I want the only ingredient to be sage, and then, steep it for at least 10 minutes, but steep it covered. It has to be covered to really activate all those chemicals. And then, that's going to really, really powerful. So what I have a lot of my clients doing that have, really bad hot flashes, like ones that, all throughout the night, keep them up all night. What I actually have them do is to brew a big pot of sage tea, at night, in the morning, whatever, and then just keep it in their fridge so they can drink it cold, because it's the summer. Not everyone wants to drink hot tea, but it has to be hot initially and then steep covered, and then you can keep it in your fridge and you can drink it throughout the day. And drinking it consistently, if you have hot flashes constantly throughout the day, drinking sage tea, instead of water, it's still a good liquid because it's an herbal tea, it's not caffeinated. So that can be, towards your water intake for the day. Drinking sage tea all day long, or especially at night before you go to bed, really, really powerful. And it's so cheap, right? Like, I always like to put these in my protocols, because even taking supplements, like knowing how they're helping your body, and it's really cool to take all these fun herbs and vitamins and stuff, but it's still just the act of taking a supplement. It's it's still a pill, right? And it's I hate the energy of that, because it keeps you stuck in the I have cancer, this is medication.
Right.
So if I can, put teas in protocols, I do, because people don't realize tea is really effective, So when you get really good quality teas, for sure. So sage tea, and then I don't do this personally, but actually acupuncture. So there's an acupuncture protocol specific to hot flashes. So it's special points and duration and frequency. So I actually have a client who had, she said, 15 hot flashes a night before she started working with me. So she's doing sage tea, and then she's seeing an acupuncturist where she lives, because again, we do remote sessions. And now she's down to 2 hot flashes a night. So for her, she's
that's huge,
loving life. Yeah, for sure. So acupuncture is really powerful, and it's covered by most insurance plans, so that's pretty great as well. But yeah, and sage tea is so accessible and really affordable.
Yeah, excellent. Do you have any recommendations? So I'm thinking, so I have sage leaves in my house, right? So I'm one of those people who once a month sages the house, or tries
gorgeous.
to do all this great stuff. Are those the same leaves that you would use to make your tea, or is there a different brand or something that you recommend?
I'm not entirely sure. I always just get the sage tea bags. So it's kind of a portion, because when the tea bags is actually the portion that you want. So if you read the instructions on tea, it actually say 1 tea bag per cup of water, steep covered for 10 minutes. Most people don't steep their tea covered because no one reads the instructions on tea, but it actually is there because that's what really helps to activate the chemicals.
Got it.
Or the phytonutrients. But I actually just want to make a distinction. You don't have to steep covered your green tea, your black tea, because that's actually not when I'm talking about steeping your herbs covered, because sage isn't a tea, right? It's just an herb. So in North America, we just associate any steeped hot beverage as a tea, but it's not actually a tea because there's no tea in it. So it's an herbal infusion. So you don't have to go and be oh, I'm not steeping my Earl Grey tea in the morning. You're fine. You don't have to. It's just any type of herbs you want to
herbal infusion. I love that. We're gonna get all classy over here. Sign me up for your nutrition.
So actually my herbal medicine class in school, my biggest takeaway was steep your teas covered. I had no idea, right? So yeah, it's powerful. So I don't know, to answer your question, it's the same as the things you use to smudge, but I have no idea, but I would just buy the bags because they're portioned out for what you need it for.
I'm going to do that tomorrow. I'm so excited. I'll have a cup before going to sleep. For sure. Yeah, the other recommendation I had, I'm not sure if you've heard of this too, but vitamin E is supposed to also really help with hot flashes, as well as just, I know in the US, I'm not sure in Canada, but just over-the-counter Claritin. That helps with your allergies and stuff, are also supposed to help with hot flashes. So again, going back to not doing Claritin, the pills, but
again, I'm just I don't want to take anything, if you don't need it, because everything you do has a reaction in your body, because it's not, it might be helping with the hot flashes, but your liver still has to detox out everything else that's in a Claritin, right? And I'm just I would rather you just get it all from sage tea or acupuncture. Absolutely. I never heard about vitamin E, but hey, that's really cool.
Yeah. So I know I was on that for a little while too when I was going through active treatment because the chemotherapies were just like wreaking havoc with the hot flashes. And it was terrible because I was going through chemo during winter. So I'd be like super hot one second and then freezing because of all the sweat the next second. And was like horrified of like going outside and like getting hypothermia or like, you know, just like the day to day was like really challenging.
Things you were concerned about then, right? Like it's so funny being like, I was concerned about hypothermia because I was sweating profusely in the middle of winter.
Right.
It's like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's crazy.
It's all going in the book.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and this webinar that you're doing, I would love to learn more about that. I'd be happy to publicize it. Is it a free webinar for people?
Yeah, it'll be a free webinar for sure. I'm really excited about it actually because I'm creating it based on the feedback that I've been getting from my Instagram and, you know, what I've been hearing in the support groups that I'm on Facebook and things like that. So really, it's kind of what I was mentioning earlier. It's like for after treatment ends, you know, 1 year, 2 year, however many years later, and you're still having these like unnecessary like symptoms. So it's kind of just addressing that and letting women know like options that they can implement to mitigate those side effects. So what I'm going to be talking about would be hot flashes. So spoiler alert, I'm already going to mention stage 2 and acupuncture. Those are my go-tos for that. But we're also going to address some other really common side effects that I still see in my clinical practice. So chronic fatigue is definitely a major one. Stress and anxiety for sure. Low libido is another one that I want to address as well. And chemo brain. Those are the biggest ones.
Oh, perfect. I would love to, if you're open to it, like advertise it in my group and have people
that
join.
Would be amazing. So I'm actually devoting tomorrow to creating the slides for it. I'm just like, I'm going to do it tomorrow. It's been on my to-do list, but I'm like, tomorrow's the day. So I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's my first webinar, so hopefully I don't have any tech issues, but I'm super excited about it because it's going to be really impactful because, you know, everything is individualized and I can't give you like a tailored approach, of course, on a webinar, but really, you know, through simple takeaways, like you could try sage tea. It's really cost effective. You know, like it can work for you. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. It's like certain things work better for other people, but you know, I really see sage tea working for almost everybody that I had on it. But yeah, you know, like for things that are more complex, like chemo brain, you know, there's a few things that, you know, work in clinical practice. It just really depends on the person. So I'm going to give the different strategies, you know, but, you know, you might have to try a different one. But kind of my pet peeve, I guess, is, you know, people wanting just like, everyone wants the quick fix, right? And I totally get that. You're in pain and you want the solution. But unfortunately, the solution is a multifaceted approach because, you know, the body is very complex. Cancer is complex. The cancer treatments we're exposed to is complex. So it's, you know, you didn't get cancer overnight and you're not going to get rid of these symptoms overnight either. It's really about implementing sustainable changes, you know, that can really support you going forward. And then some, you know, some supplements and, you know, things like that to really just get you there quicker. But like I said earlier, you can't do it just nutrition. You can't do it just supplementation. And, you know, I don't like when I get like a message or something on Instagram. It's like, is vitamin D good for me? And I'm like, well, I can't, like, yes, it's good for everybody, but I don't know the level you would need. Like maybe you live in Florida and you're exposed to sun and you don't need any more because too much vitamin D can actually be toxic to your kidneys. So I'm like, I can't give you a dose, you know. It's like, so there's a lot to it. So it's really just a multifaceted approach. So that's kind of like what the webinar is going to be about, is that these are things that you can do, but you really need to do a bunch of things in culmination to really, really, really truly heal. And my message is to really empower you to want to heal because your life is just so beautiful and so worth living fully. And it's like, why don't you want to have all that energy? You can have it all.
Totally. You can have it all. Absolutely. Don't we want that? Yeah. I need to get back on, I don't want to use the word diet, but there was a while where my boyfriend and I were following a pretty strict regimen of doing a ton of juices, especially like first thing in the morning and almost every other hour doing a cold pressed juice. And I have to say, like, my cognitive ability, like, after like 4 weeks was like through the roof. I honestly felt like I beat chemo brain because I was having these like celery juices or carrot juices. I was infusing them with the gingers or the turmeric or different like herbs and stuff to go into it, and just eating very whole plant-based foods, doing a lot of baking. I realized part of my diet, even though I was eating a lot of vegetables, I was doing a lot of sauteing with olive oil. And I was like, wow, I'm really probably putting too much fat in my diet. So it was just like small little tweaks that I'm sure you address in your program is like, wow, I didn't realize I was oversaturating in one area and not getting enough nutrients in the other, and really finding what that balance was for me. It was quite like a testament of like being able to go to work and not be short of words and being able to think clearly and not spend hours trying to like overthink an email. So
yeah, that's amazing. And that's pretty cool that you notice such a shift, because it's like not everyone feels great when they juice, right? I'm someone who doesn't feel great when I juice. So
yeah.
I love me a cold pressed juice for sure. It's just like a nice treat, and like I'm out and I'm like, oh, that would be a nice thing today. And I actually always get cold pressed juices when I travel, just because I always feel like I get run down when I'm traveling, because I'm trying to do so much. So it's a good way to get like a high dose, intake of vitamins and minerals, because your body doesn't have to do any work to absorb them when they're in a juice. But I'm actually someone like I can't do juice cleanses. Whenever I do, like it really just throws my hormones off. Like I don't respond well to that level of like an insulin spike from the sugar. So even if it's like a celery juice or things like that, like I'm better with it. But as soon as I throw in like a carrot, an apple, a beet, it's like I go off. So nutrition, it's not black and white, because someone like you could thrive on it and actually notice their cognitive function getting better, whereas like it throws my entire hormonal ecosystem off. So I don't really juice. So it's interesting that you felt better, and I am happy for it. And that's kind of my thing, is like I ask a lot of detailed questions when I work with people, just to get the best way to eat for you, because it's not the same for everybody.
Right. So for someone listening, if they wanted to follow up with you and ask questions or get in touch, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, so you can connect with me on Instagram. That's probably the best way. My handle is at nutritious_delicious_life. And nutritious is spelled Nutritious. A lot of people spell it wrong. And honestly, I had myself questioning it. I'm like, is this how you spell nutritious? But yeah, so it's nutritious_delicious_life. And honestly, the easiest way is to connect with me through there. If you don't have Instagram, my Facebook page is Nutritious Delicious Life, and there's spaces between them. Or, you can just email me. We can connect that way. That's always fun too. So it's Lauren, LAUREN, at nutritiousdeliciouslife.com.
Awesome. Great. And I'll be able to post in the descriptions too of the podcast and potential YouTube videos as well with all this information, so people can find you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. And I actually just wanted to say as well, so I have been doing my individual coaching practice now for quite a while, and I've been taking it online, which is great. But my real, passion project has always been to create a group coaching program. So I'm in the process of creating that right now. So I actually, if you go to my Instagram, there's a link in my bio to sign up for the wait list for that program, because what I really want to do is work on creating that now, but I would love to do it like, if people sign up on it, I do it like probably tomorrow. I would definitely like get on it quicker. So, if you're listening and you're like, oh my gosh, I would love to, work with you one-on-one or in a group setting, please, I encourage you to fill out, just sign up on the link in my bio. It's a free link. And, as soon as I create the program, I'll reach out. Just because, one-on-one coaching is amazing, of course, but it is expensive because there's a lot of, time and support that's involved with that. Group coaching, makes it more affordable. And also, there is so much power and strength in group healing. Like the power of community is second to none. Like this podcast, it fosters community. Every group coaching program I've ever been a part of, because I love being coached. I'm being coached right now. I have a business coach. She's also a life coach. It's like being coached is the best. And every group coaching program I've ever been in has profoundly impacted my life. And it's just like, I'm trying to encourage my clients to really, take charge of their health and view this as an opportunity to transform from the inside out. It's not easy work. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, we're gonna eat some vegetables tomorrow and we're good. It's like, this is the process. It's a 12-week program that I run. So it's involved, but it's the exact strategies that I use myself to live my best life without fear of recurrence. So it's what I want to, teach, you to do as well. And, a 12-week program, it's a journey, it's a process, but it's a beautiful thing. And I think if you go through that transformation with a group of people at the same time, it just really gives you a level of momentum, clarity, connectedness. Like, it's just a really beautiful thing.
And similarly, we are doing a virtual, I don't want to call it a webinar. I don't know what to call it, but kind of like our meet and greet taken virtually. So people from all over the US and the world can pretty much join in September. It's either September 9th or 10th. I got to look on my events page. But we have a nutritionist coming on virtually who's going to do a cooking demo. And so I'd love for you to join if you're around and available. We're going to send out the recipe in advance so people, if they want, can go and purchase the ingredients. Or they can just, watch and chime in and have conversation with the group. But we're going to try, I've never done this before, but do a live cooking virtual demo. And then when everything bakes, she's going to do some Q&A. And then after the session, we'll all have a delicious dinner to eat. Lauren, thank you so much for being on the show. This was an incredible conversation. I personally learned so much, and I know how valuable this is going to be to our listeners. I also want to highlight that on September 18th, you're going to be hosting a webinar. Our listeners can sign up at survivingbreastcancer.org/events and to RSVP for this 100% online webinar. So I hope to see you guys all there. Thank you so much and have a great day. If this podcast was helpful, be sure to subscribe, share with your friends, and leave a review so we know that you liked it. There are so many ways to join our community. Be sure to subscribe to our weekly newsletter at survivingbreastcancer.org. Follow us on Instagram, survivingbreastcancer.org, all one word, and on YouTube at bit.ly/YouTube SBC, and on Twitter, SBC_ORG. If you have a topic idea or would like to be a guest on our show, please contact me at laura@survivingbreastcancer.org. We love hearing from you. Please remember that the content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only, and because each person is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Views and opinions expressed in our podcast and website are our own and do not represent that of our workplaces. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, we welcome any comments, suggestions, or corrections. In no way does listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient relationship. Thanks. Until next time. Talk to you then.